Leadership is for those who love the public good and are endowed and trained to administer it. A very warm welcome to all. I'm Mitra Venugopal, second year student of the Department of Media Studies, Nagar College, Trivandrum. Welcome to the IMPETUS 2023 International Conference on Content for the Public Good, Reimagining Media Ecosystem in the Era of Paywalls and Generative AI, organized by the Department of Media Studies and IQAC, Nagar College, Trivandrum. Let us start the program with a silent prayer. Now, I invite Manju Rose Matthews, our faculty and head of the Department of Media Studies, Nagar College, Trivandrum, for the welcome address.
Good evening to one and all. Welcome to IMPETUS 2023. I'm Manju Rose Matthews, head of the Department of Media Studies at Nagar College, Maranallur, Trivandrum. On behalf of our principal, Dr. Jolie Jacob, Director and Manager, Reverend Dr. Tito Verghese, CMI, and Reverend Father Subin Koto, CMI, and our organizing team, Emil Abraham, Tara CB, Ninu PK, and student coordinators, Mitrey Venugopal, Ram Gopal Harikrishnan, and Jennifer Reynolds. We welcome all to IMPETUS 2023. Department of Media Studies has been organizing IMPETUS as an annual international media conference, bringing together thought leaders, media researchers, media educators, and technologists. IMPETUS 2023 is the third edition of our annual conference. The theme of IMPETUS 2023 is Content for Public Good, Reimagining Media Ecosystem in the Era of Paywalls and Generative AI. The conference explores the emerging trends shaping media and content ecosystem in the light of technological changes and emerging models. The focus is to understand how it impacts society and also to inspire further research. IMPETUS 2023 is organized by Quality Assurance Cell and the Department of Media Studies, Nagar College, in association with Artificial Intelligence Journalism for Research and Forecasting, UAE, Focus Games, UK, and Sacred Heart School of Communication, Thevra, Kochi. Thanks for your association and welcome you all to the conference. We are grateful to have Digital University Kerala as the knowledge partner for the conference, a pioneering and foremost digital university in India, conducting cutting-edge research and nurturing talents for promoting and implementing modern technological interventions in disruptive technologies. The university focuses on capacity building at postgraduate and doctoral levels in the areas of artificial intelligence and natural language processing, Internet of Things, electronic systems and automation, imaging technologies, data analytics and big data, cybersecurity, blockchain, ecological informatics, geospatial analytics, digital humanities, etc. We have Professor Ashraf S., the Dean of Research and Development, joining from the university to inaugurate the conference. We welcome you to the conference. United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development recognizes the fundamental importance of access to information to the public sphere, governance, and development by including 16.10 in Sustainable Development Goals target, which is stated to ensure public access to information and protect fundamental freedoms in accordance with national legislation and international agreement. The emerging business models of news outlets, entertainment industry, and social media platforms seem to limit public access to content. Media restrictions and regulations, even in democracies, are furthermore posing threat to citizens' right to information. Advancement in content technologies like generative AI and blockchain technologies has far greater impact on media ecosystem in the developing chain technologies has far greater impact on media ecosystem in the developing countries. Meanwhile, content creators in video streaming platforms have found a new bounty of opportunities for reach and revenue. This conference shall explore the emerging trends redefining the media ecosystem in this transformative era. We have an excellent panel of speakers for the opening session of Impetus 2023. Anna Christine Rulis is a senior program specialist, section for freedom of expression and safety of journalists. Join us from UNESCO, Paris. Professor Mohammed Abdul Zahir is the professor of Intelligent Integrated Media and Mass Communication, College of Communication, University of Sharjah, and also CEO of AIJRF UAE. Melvin Bell is the founder director of Focus Games and joins from Glasgow, Scotland. Extending a warmest welcome to all distinguished speakers. We have been receiving excellent support for Impetus since the first edition in 2020. We welcome all participants who have joined us online. We have journalists, media students, media educators, and researchers join for the conference. For the kind attention of the participants, there is a Q&A session. After each session, participants can ask questions on the link provided with you, and our moderators shall pick the questions and ask to the speakers. Now, I kindly request Jennifer Renault to introduce Professor Ashraf S., our inaugural speaker.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, all. I am Jennifer Renault, second-year student at the Department of Media Studies, Nagar College. Today, I'm here to introduce Professor Ashraf S. and invite him to the inaugural ceremony. Professor Ashraf S., who is a computer engineer, scientist with extensive exposure in algorithms for machine learning, is the Dean of Research and Development, Digital University of Kerala. In addition to his current role as a professor at the Indian Institute of Information Technology and Management, Kerala, he also serves as a visiting faculty for management development programs at Indian Institute of Management, Kochi, and works as a mentor in Kerala Startup Mission. He received his PhD and Master of Engineering degree in Computer Science from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He graduated in Computer Engineering from Kochi University of Science and Technology. After BTech, he has worked as a lecturer at TKM College of Engineering, Kollam, and after completing PhD, he has worked as a research scientist at American Online R&D Labs and as an assistant professor at Indian Institute of Management, Kochi. He has various awards and accolades to his credit, including IBM Outstanding PhD Student Award 2006, IBM Shade University Research Grant 2015, IBM Open Science Collaboration Program Grant 2017, and DBT BIRAC Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Research Grant under the Grand Challenges India Program 2019. He has published 3 books and more than 50 research papers in international journals and conferences. He has also served as a founding professor in charge of Nagar Village, Kochi, and is currently serving as the professor in charge of Kerala Blockchain Academy. His areas of interest includes technologies and business models related to data engineering, machine learning, information retrieval, and blockchains. It is indeed an honor to have such a dignified personality with us. Now, I invite Professor Ashraf S. for the inaugural address.
Thank you, Jennifer. Professor Manju, other distinguished guest panelists, dear colleagues, friends, it's indeed a pleasure to deliver a talk in the inaugural session of IMPETUS 2023, the conference on content for public good. I just want to address this context, the context of content for public good in 3 dimensions. These dimensions that I'm interested primarily are on the content creation ecosystems. How these content creation ecosystems have emerged over the past. We know that early on, the content was created primarily by the subject matter experts. This is the old generation where if you are aware of a certain area or a domain, you create content around that. We moved on. We reached what is called the social era or collaborative era, where curation, crowdsourcing became the norm. So now content can be curated, can be collected from groups of people, put together, and in a proper form can be presented. And today we are in the era of generative AI, and everybody is talking about what is called the machine generated content, which is the ML generated content or chat GPT generated content or Bark generated content, the Google's alternative to chat GPT. So how does these ecosystems have evolved from somebody who is subject matter expert to collecting content and curating? Then the machines learns pattern out of huge collection of data. If there is huge collection of data, what this machine learning or the AI can do is it can identify irregularities in this data or this content and create content which seems to be original. And if you look at the baseline, which is primarily the mechanism which creates this content, it's all about the underlying patterns which we have identified. And with the new age of technologies, including what is being celebrated as the deep learning, which is primarily mimicking the human brain using artificial neural networks, we were able to crack this problem of identifying the underlying patterns and generate it. So we have the chat GPTs of the world today. That's the first development. And the second dimension that I'm interested is the distribution mechanism, how the content get distributed, primarily the digital world. We used to have the full text databases, the directories or the Alta Vistas of the world, where everything was listed out and you can go to the content repositories and find out what are those directory structures or directories which contain those content and get in there, access it. That was the old era where content was collected, curated, kept, and you can get into the primarily the databases which list this content and then access it. Then came the Google's era, which is primarily around creating indices. If you look at Google, Google is nothing but, as all of us know, it's nothing but a reverse index of the entire web. So you've created a reverse index of the entire web using machine learning technologies or pattern recognition technologies and provided that as an experience, which is called the search engine era. And that happened parallelly with the social web, where content was getting created, curated, and consumed by the same set of people, where collaboration was a key. So second distribution mechanism became, and primarily the mechanism of content access became the search engine. And where do we stand today? We are celebrating a machine which can answer our questions, which is the generative era, where you ask questions to an engine will give the answer to the question. But think of the previous generation of access. What was it? It was primarily around you ask a question, you put a phrase, search phrase, and you get anything and everything around it using a reverse index. And now we are in an era where we ask what we need and we get what we need. And our questions get answered. So we are in an era of the chat being the primary means for accessing content. That's the second dimension. So we have moved from directory structures which enlist content and we access it, similar to our are catalogs in libraries, to search mechanisms, which is nothing but reverse index, and currently chat engines, which is essentially giving an experience of asking a question and getting an answer back. So the third dimension, beyond distribution, what are the organization structures that drives this entire journey? When it comes to the SME era, or the subject matter expert creating content, and then there are consumers on the other end who consume this content. This is called the producer-consumer era, where this, in the digital world, we call this the Web 1.0 era. So there'll be people who create content, and content being hosted somewhere or content being provided in some repositories, and we access content. We are only consumers of content, and there are content creators. That's the first era. Was the second era, it's called the social era, where you write content. Say, for example, somebody is creating a blog, and their blog getting indexed by a company like Google, and that index content being accessed by another set of people, or maybe the same set of people. So there is collaborative creation of content, crowdsourcing of content. The boundary between the producer and consumer is more or less gone. Now we have the what is called the social era of content consumption. That's the organization structure, and where we stand now. Now we are in an era of people talking about the new web, the new way of putting content, which is called the Web 3.2. What is Web 3.2? It's nothing but they call it the semantic web. Somebody calls it the decentralized web. When we create content in the current web ecosystem, what we do is we submit this content to a platform, and the content is streamed from that platform, whether it's media or it's textual content, it's being hosted somewhere and you consume it. Is this necessary to have such a mechanism? No, we don't need this. We can actually have our content at our end, because originally the internet was perceived to be a communication media, which is more of democratic in nature. But the current era platform that we consume are more of platforms where the content being positioned and we consume. And we may have an option for collaboration, but the web is more of centralized, where the centralized services are being consumed, even in the content era, in the content context. And then we are not distinguished by as producers or consumers, but the democratic distribution of data doesn't happen here. Can we make that happen? That's where the Web 3.0 get in. And that's where the new age technologies like artificial intelligence or blockchain would play a role. What blockchain brings in, blockchain is nothing but a ledger, it's a ledgering mechanism. So currently we depend on potentially a third party. Let's think about a little past era. So for example, you have to write a content, you have to write a book. You approach a publisher, you prepare your content, you approach a publisher, get it published, and then there are consumers who read this book. In the current era, what we do, we can actually create our own digital repository, or we can create our own blogs or our own channels, and we create content. It's beyond text. We can even create content in the media world, and then provide that an experience. We are still in the centralized web, which is mostly Web 2.2, but we are moving from economy creators to creator economy. What is economy creators? You want to publish a book, you write your book, and then primarily the book gets published by someone else, and you get a royalty, which is maybe 10% of what the revenue or the profit that the company makes. In the current era, the creator economy, you have more access to the distribution mechanisms where you create content. You're still in the Web 2.2. You have content, you get into a platform, say it can be a short movie that you create, and then you provide it into a video platform. I don't want to mention platforms and names of the platforms out there. And then you get at least more you have more opportunity in this space to get a larger cut of the revenue that the platform makes, right? Ultimately, if you can create your own platform, you may end up in a context where or your content is hosted from your side, your own decently mechanism, which is being the primary driver of Web 3.2. You may even have access to the 100% of the revenue. So basically, you are moving from a creator of economy to a primarily an economy creator to a creator economy context. That's what the new era technologies like the blockchain, which is nothing but the underlying layer which enables trust for removing the third party that comes into play. So I want to ask a few questions. We have 3 dimensions. One is we have moved from the SME to the machine generated content in the content creation era, content creation paradigm. And then we have distribution have moved from full text to chat. The structures, organizational structures have moved from producer consumer to a creator economy. In the current context of content for public good, I just want to ask a few questions. The first question being, you have a platform which creates content, which is our bar for the content, the chat GPTs of the world. Does this platform really have intelligence? Is it having capability to create original content? Because these are created by algorithms or machinery, which essentially learns patterns out of large corpus. And that's why they are called large language models or LLMs. You have large corpus, they learn a lot around the corpus, and then they create content which do have minimal levels of regularity as we perceive, but there is regularity. And that's being projected. Is it really intelligent? My answer to this is, originally the intelligence was being tested by the celebrated test called Turing test, where it's as simple as that, like this. You have a human and a machine sitting in 2 rooms, and there is an interrogator. The interrogator asks a question to both the rooms and you get a response. If the interrogator is unable to distinguish between the machine and the human, whether the machine has answered or the human has answered, then we say that it has passed what is called the Turing test, the intelligence test. Our chat GPT sitting in one room and a human sitting in another room asks a question, and it's more or less difficult, and it has failed, of course, in the civil service examination, but it has cleared in many of the other examinations that it has been through. So it may clear the Turing test. But a later research suggested, this is the context, this is called the Chinese room argument. What this Chinese room argument says is, there is room, there's a lot of Chinese content available, and you're putting an English native, a speaker who can speak only English, a person who can speak only English is put in that room, and that person is given instructions in English, how he can access this Chinese content and respond to the questions that's being asked. So there is a rule book to access the content which is in Chinese, and all the instructions are given in English. And it's being proven that if questions in Chinese being asked, meaning Mandarin being asked this person, he can very well answer these questions with the correct rule book in place, which means that the person in the room, the English speaking person in the room with Chinese content doesn't have to understand, do not have to understand anything in Chinese, doesn't have to have any idea of the semantics behind. Still, he can answer questions in Chinese being answered in Chinese by an English speaking man. Can't we think that our chat GPTs of the world is doing the same thing? It doesn't get into the semantics, it only identifies patterns, the underlying patterns, and creates potential answers to your questions without really understanding the context. That's a potential possibility. What is the risk? If you have training misdirected, it can potentially generate anything. So it can have biases, and it's being proven. In the other AI systems, biased content being created, you can even check your chat GPT and ask questions who are the world leaders in one particular context. And you can see that the content is generally from the context where it is being trained on. You can ask these questions. So there is bias around content. That's one of the challenges that we have to address when we move from the human to the machine generated content, and we need to worry about that. That's the first dimension. The second question that I want to ask, I mean, we have mechanisms like the Creative Commons licenses, primarily the mechanisms through which we have come to, we provide free access to content. Is this really free in the digital era? And how are these platforms able to give us content for free? And of course, the answer is our consumption patterns and the data we generate is being monetized. We are shown content in a context where possibly we are being nudged to the context of their interests. We don't know. The free is still a question. Is the free really free? That's another dimension that I wanted to raise here. And the third is on the attitude, right? We are talking about content for public good. If you look at our past generation or our generation, if you have access to one specific information, right? Our old, say for example, the information that you carry has an edge over another competent. Let it be an examination, let it be a business context. We'll keep it to ourselves, right? That's our old generation. We say like, okay, our competence is primarily, we actually compete in a space where the information gap being the primary driver. We say that, okay, yeah, that fellow doesn't know it, so I have an edge over that person. That was the old era. And look at the current generation of people. They're in a competitive examination. Out of the competitive examination, they come to this social platform. Hey, these kind of questions being asked. These were the primary, way in which the interview word was approaching. And this is what I see on the road. You should not be taking this road. So we have moved to a generation which has this attitude for sharing data content. Is our platforms really leveraging on this? If you look at the platforms which monetizes such opportunities, the crowdsourced platforms, including the Googles of the world, when we present some content for consumption, even in the public context, the fact-checking part or the credibility of the content is definitely a question. And how does these platforms typically do? They have a system called a karma. They actually depend on your karma to decide whether to believe you or not. It can be anywhere from you tagging a content as inappropriate to spamming an email. They only use data that they believe to train their machine. And now we have a generation which is ready to share their content. And when we create content, when we create platforms of the new era, which is the Web 3.0 era, where decentralization is the norm, are we enabling this new generation who is ready to share the information and co-create content? With that note, I want to stop here asking these three primary questions. When we move from the new ways of creating content, new ways of distribution mechanisms, and new organization structures in the context of content, how do we leverage technology? That's one. Can we believe what is being projected, what is being positioned to us as intelligent? Is this free and positioned as free is really free? Is the new generation is more oriented towards sharing, because that's our primary context, because content for public good? Are we creating mechanisms to enable it? With these three questions, I would like to congratulate the organization behind this conference with a very interesting theme, very relevant to the current context of providing access to the right content. And I know that there are panelists who are going to talk about what's right and how do you believe, and even there are sessions around checking facts, being the content that's being positioned as accessible and public. I hope the deliberations that are going to happen over the 2 days here will open up new opportunities to our budding content creators, people who work towards more democratic mechanism for distribution of content, as well as the technologists and enablers of new organizational structures which would empower our new generation for enabling good content access for public good. And with that note, I'd like to declare this session, the conference being open. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Professor Ashraf S. It was very enlightening to all of us, and I hope that everybody gets an answer for your all 3 questions. Now, I would like to pass on to Mithray Venugopal to introduce our first speaker of the day. Over to you, Mithray.
A warm welcome to one and all present here. I'm Mithray Venugopal, second-year student of the Media Department of Nagar College, Trivandrum. It is my honor to introduce our guest, Anna Cristina Ruelas, Senior Program Specialist in the section of Freedom of Expression and Safety of Journalists, UNESCO, Paris. Ms. Ruelas champions the cause of freedom of expression and the right to information worldwide. She is a Senior Program Specialist in UNESCO's CL sector and focuses her work on freedom of expression in the digital environment. She was previously in the Regional Directorate of Article 19's Office for Mexico and Central America, and previously she held the position of Right to Information Program Officer of the organization, leading the development of projects related to education for development. Ms. Ruelas also worked in the Right to the Information Office of the Mexican National Human Rights Organizations in both Mexico and Peru. She's a lawyer and has a master's degree in public administration and public policy from the Instituto Tecnológico de Estudios Superior de Monterrey. She will be sharing her insight on protecting the right to information, freedom of expression, and open access in the new media ecosystem evolving with emerging technologies. We are beyond privileged to have you here with us today, ma'am. I welcome you to the program. There will be a Q&A session after the talk. A mentor-mentee link has been posted in the YouTube comments. You can post your questions in the link given below. Now, I invite Ms. Ruelas to take over the session.
Thank you very much for this kind introduction, and thank you very much to the Nagar College for your kind invitation to this very important event. I am very, very excited to be here virtually. I want to start saying that despite the many threats facing journalism in the world, it is important for you as students to know that journalism and media has managed to be resilient to all of these threats. And that's something that we need to celebrate. The work that you do and the work that you will be doing once you graduate every day, it is important for the life of everyone. And that's why we acknowledge in UNESCO that journalism is a public good, that information is a public good that everyone needs to protect, that information is a way for all of us to be able to participate actively in the civic space and to decide what do we want for our future. So I wanted to say that because sometimes when we study media or journalism, we do not realize that the product of our work can impact in many different ways the life of others. That thanks to the work that you will be doing or that you're doing right now, is that many people can have water in their houses, that many people is able to find justice, and that many people is, even for instance in my country where we have a very difficult situation of human rights, can also have truth. So it is important to know that the piece that media and journalism play in the information as a public good is a key. And despite all the threats, as I said in the beginning, you have been resilient. And that's an important thing to say in order to celebrate this event. As I say, it is true, we cannot deny that journalism in the digital age faced new challenges, while the same past remains. We still see a lot of journalist killings, we still see surveillance, we still see all of these other threats, but now with the digital era, we see new forms of threats against journalism. Social media platforms provide unprecedented opportunities for people to connect, learn, and engage. They facilitate the exercise of free expression with enormous potential to bring together the people, including to tackle global challenges. Journalists increasingly depend on digital tools to participate in public life and pursue their work. However, the digital ecosystem has also unleashed a flood of competing content and turned large internet companies into new gatekeepers. Globally, newspaper sales continue to decline, and news outlets struggle to get the clicks that determine advertising revenue. Though they have shifted rapidly toward internet companies. Many media outlets find themselves further squeezed out by the proliferation of new voices in the online space and the algorithms of digital intermediaries. Let me be clear, as I've said before, again and again, and I will not stop saying it, journalism is a public good. Therefore, its sustainability relies on the trust of the audience. Mis and disinformation, enabled and even accelerated by internet companies, has added to years of declining trust in media worldwide and become a major threat to information as a public good. That is why UNESCO has been affirmative about the responsibility of states and social media companies to respond to this problem. Yes, states have, on the one hand, a key role to play in putting in place effective regulations, but they must avoid approaches to overstep and threaten the book of expression that is protected against restriction. Companies, on the other hand, need to do much more to have consistent and transparent policies covering technology development, content and behaviors, as well as effective notice and reviews procedures and effective remedies, as well as sufficient resources for such operations. To ensure greater transparency and accountability, states should make public their request to take down content or impose other restrictions on access and content, including requests to access users' data. Companies should be transparent about how they create and moderate content, and they should do it applying human rights standards. They should also ensure that users have effective opportunities to appeal or request to review our decisions regarding their access to and use of online spaces they consider to be unfair. They are responsible of securing independent fact-checking or authoritative sources in order to identify what is disinformation. They also need to use recommendation and trending algorithm system to elevate timely and accurate information, both in their content presentation hierarchies and in the results available by their search facilities. Journalists, as yourselves, need to have open and secure access to online spaces and have a say in the development of measures related to digital technologies and platforms. Therefore, we have been clear that encryption is essential to the safety and privacy of journalists and civil society actors in carrying out their work. UNESCO has recently organized a global conference called Internet for Trust that was held in February 2023, where we wanted to spark a big conversation around the process of regulating digital platforms to ensure the safeguarding of freedom of expression, access to information, and ensure that companies should put in place processes and structures that abide to human rights standards, primarily to the Article 19 and Article 20 of the ICCPR, which expressly say which is that kind of content that can be subject of restrictions, such as misinformation, disinformation, hate speech. Our goal is that we can promote the development of a guidelines for regulating digital platforms that is actually a tool that is used by the member states and by civil society, by the media, and all of different actors to do advocacy processes and try to find this type of new way of doing laws that instead of addressing a problem, create a new problem, trying to censor and limiting the important content that even journalists produced. So for us, it is very, very important that you engage in this process. I will say that it is even more important for you as students, as young people, as the people that is actually the main user of these tools, to engage in a process, in a policy processes that aims to be the first of many global discussions where we try to actually make set the standard for regulating digital platforms. I would really like to hear your voice. I will stop here in order to hear your questions. And thank you very much again for your invitation.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your insight with us and reminding us all that journalism is a public good. Now, I invite Neenu PK, Assistant Professor, Department of Media Studies, Nagar College, Trivandrum, for the Q&A session.
Hello, ma'am. I'm Neenu, and I'll be moderating the question answer sessions. Okay. So shall we begin?
Perfect.
So the first question is, you said that journalism is public good. So the first question is related to that. The participant wants to ask you, why do you believe that journalism is a public good, and what can journalism do to maintain that standard of public good?
Well, I have to say that it is important for me when I started working defending journalism, I will say, I realized, and I think this is the best form to explain it, that the product of your work, your daily work as a journalist, is a way of lifesaver. Why do I say this? Because every time you wake up, you see the news, and sometimes you assume that the news will be there. But let's imagine one day without anything that you can read, that turning out your television, reading the Twitter, reading Facebook or TikTok, and not having any content that can tell you how to go out to the streets, how if there has been a protest, if there has been if there's a problem with water, if etc. Journalists help you to make decisions about your life, about how you are going to, even where are you going to buy a house, because you know the information that they produce can give you the opportunity to decide. That's why it is that I say that, and I don't even say, it's not even my wording, it's UNESCO wording, that information is a public good that is for everyone's, because once you do that work doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to all the people that has the opportunity to use it, to decide and participate in a different way. They can use it for their lives in their house, but they can also use it to go out and do whatever. Like, you know, like they can go to the beach because they realize that there's a huge a great beach around your house. You can decide not to go somewhere because it became a very violent place. You decide to buy something because you realize that it is very good for you. Like, does many things that, you know, like you, as readers, as audiences, have the opportunity to exercise all of other rights thanks to the work that you do. So that's why information and journalism is a public good.
Okay, thank you for answering that question. Now we'll move on to the next one, shall we? Okay, so the second question is, what is UNESCO's role in influencing big technology companies like Google, Microsoft, Twitter, OpenAI, etc., to have algorithms that enable to check fake news and hatred in digital space?
Well, UNESCO has a mandate to create standards, to be a laboratory of ideas. Also, UNESCO has the power to convene the different actors to have a dialogue among each other. You know, actually, during the global conference Internet for Trust, we had the opportunity to bring together the different stakeholders. There was the different companies. We had Google, Twitter, TikTok in the table. But we also have media, we also had academics, we had governments, you know, to discuss about an issue that it matters to all. So this convening power, what allows us is for the different people to hear each other, to try to understand the problems and to try to define what are the best solutions to address these problems. So UNESCO, after this hearing all these voices, is trying to prepare a set of guidelines of how this conversation should move forward. Definitely, UNESCO has no regulatory powers. You know, we are only an intergovernmental organization that can guide the process of discussing this, with the only non-negotiable part that it has to do with everything that we do has to be abided to human rights principles and human rights standards. So for us, all of the conversations that we have with companies and all the other actors have to do with this. And at this point, specifically in the guidance for regulating digital platforms, we are setting out a set of recommendations in the regulatory process that have to do specifically with what are the company's processes and structures should do in order to abide to human rights standards, specifically when they have to do with algorithms, with automated, with artificial intelligence systems, in order to make sure that when they decide on moderating and creating content, they do it following human rights standards. So you can find all the information about this in the Internet for Trust UNESCO conference in the internet. I can put in the chat the link. But I think it is important that there you can find like all of the things that, at least at this point, and not from only UNESCO point of view, but these are the result of consultations that have gathered more than 3,000 comments from all around the world. What are those things that the different people think that companies should be doing at this point in order to fight these difficult situations?
Okay, thank you for answering that question. Due to the severe time limitation, we'll cut short the question answer session. And this is the last question. So the question is, what are the new guidelines being developed for digital platforms?
Well, these guidelines, UNESCO started in September last year, a consultation process to try to develop a document that will help member states that are trying to regulate the processes and structures that are established within the companies for content moderation and creation, and acknowledging that many countries are approving or pushing for initiatives that not necessarily and sometimes inadvertently are failing to follow human rights principles. So we know about many states, for instance, that have pushed laws that criminalize fake news and that have been used against journalists. We've known about many other laws that have been trying to target hate speech, have criminalized speech in a way that have been putting the same ones that have been subject to hate speech in jail. So one of the things that we are trying to do is to create a minimum standard that could allow states to say, okay, if you want to approach to regulating digital platforms, trying to fight these things that are there, that we cannot deny that are there, you will have to do it in a way that you can ensure, I will say, three main things. One is that there's an enabling environment. So you government also have to abide to a set of responsibilities that have to do with promoting and respecting and guaranteeing freedom of expression and information. The second thing is that there should be an independent regulatory system. This means that the institutions that relate to the companies, that make oversight to the companies, should be always independent. And the third thing is that companies should follow 5 principles: transparency, accountability, their content management and moderation mechanism should follow human rights principles. They should have due diligence processes in place, which means that they have to do risk management and risk assessments when they develop new products, but also when there's different contexts that are happening all the time around. And then they have to make sure that their users are empowered and have the possibility to make complaints. These are pretty much what the guidelines are addressing. But I urge you to come to the page and download them, because we are right now, we just closed on the stage of consultation, but we will open a new stage of consultation around the 20th of April. And it will be very good to hear from you about this.
Thank you, Ms. Anna, for answering all the questions. And that is the end of the question answer session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye, ma'am. Okay, so now we will move on to the next speaker. And for the same, I invite Jennifer Ronald to take over from here. Jennifer, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Once again, good evening all. I'm Jennifer Ronald, second year student at the Department of Media Studies, Nagar College, and I'm here to introduce our next speaker, Professor Muhammad Abdul Zahir, to the audience. Dr. Abdul Zahir is the Professor of Intelligent Integrated Media and Mass Communication at the College of Communication, University of Sharjah, UAE. Dr. Abdul Zahir, CEO of Artificial Intelligence of Research and Forecasting and pioneer in artificial intelligence journalism and media of Metaverse, has over 20 years of professional experience in both online and print media formats under his belt. His craft has taken him to numerous countries and regions as a mass communication practitioner. Fluent in both Arabic and English, his bilingual skills have made him an asset to several high-profile communication organizations. He has been a news editor, journalist, and media trainer for the British Broadcasting Corporation World Service in the UK, the United Nations, the Financial Times Group, and Thomson Reuters. He is also a trainer and designer for artificial intelligence technologies and solutions in media content such as automated text, AI videos, AI audio podcast, new tools for detecting fake content, etc. Dr. Muhammad Abdul Zahir has worked as managing editor at the executive office of H.H. Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the UAE Vice President and Prime Minister of United Arab Emirates, ruler of Dubai. Dr. Abdul Zahir's work span over 90 papers and reports in media studies both in English and Arabic. His works include artificial intelligence, journalism, and intelligence integrated public relations, and 14 books on media and AI in both Arabic and English languages. I invite Dr. Muhammad Abdul Zahir for the keynote address on media of metaverse and metaverse integrated communication. Also, for the kind note of the participants, there will be a Q&A session after the talk. Participants can type their questions in the mentor-mentee link given in the YouTube comment box.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for such great introduction. And also thank you so much, Professor Manjo. You always a great leader for such good event every year. And my pleasure to be part of this event yearly, me and my organization, AIJRF. Thank you so much, everybody, for attendance. And today, inshallah, we'll show you something related to the media of metaverse, or what I called it metaverse integrated communication, how the metaverse will change the communication processing. Also, I'll just give you a quick insight about ChatGPT, how it will affect on the media industry in the coming 5 years. So, okay. So the paper would be Media of Metaverse and the Metaverse Integrated Communication. And my talking points today will be communication from the smart to metaverse integrated communication, metaverse or the next generation of artificial intelligence journalism, and global and local experience in metaverse. And there is another part will be about the ChatGPT and how it will affect or how it will change the media during the coming years. So this is about me. This is about the AIJRF. If you would like to know more about our organization. So the part is how to use GPT in artificial intelligence journalism era, and I will give you a quick information or quick details about UAE government communication related to the metaverse, how they are using metaverse now. So now I'd like to just give you like insight about what is the smart or intelligent communication and metaverse integrated communication. What is the difference? Here, if we talk about smart or digital communication, is the way you are using online tools. Any online tools we started to use from 2003, this is related to digital communication. Facebook, social media, any kind of social media, any kind of digital media tools, or I call it's Web 2 tools. Any kind of Web 2 tools, it's a digital communication. So social media, texting, Facebook, any kind of these tools are Web 2 related to Web 2 is a digital media communication. So what is the metaverse integrated communications? Here we are talking about all the Web3 tools and technologies moving forward to create any kind of content. This is the metaverse integrated communication. How to use this kind of content and integrate to 3D and virtual environment inside the metaverse. This is the integrated or this is the metaverse integrated communication. So now world are moving from just 2D content to the 3D content, and the metaverse is the best way or the best environment to deliver this kind of 3D content. So what I called it's metaverse integrated communication. Why it is integrated? Because it's more fast, cheaper, more integrated with people, with your avatars, with kind of people, organization are presenting this kind of content, integrated communicator better than the Web 2 or the digital traditional media communication. So the metaverse integrated communication based on some elements like metaverse, 3D graphics, blockchain, digital identity, and micro payment, AI, big data, AI, machine learning, whatever, and decentralization of content and data. So this is the main pillars that metaverse integrated communication based on. So if we check now the smart digital communication, what happens in internet during the 1 hour and 1 minute last year, and this is I think for the maybe July last year, so it looked like before 8 months ago. So if we check what happens on like say in text message, 16 plus million text message people are using during 1 minute in the world. What about email sending? Email sent, 231 million emails sent. So I don't like to bother yourself with this such numbers, but have a look how many data we are moving during 1 minute. This is from 8 months. I am sure, pretty sure this number has been duplicated now. So this kind of data, and people forecast that during like 2 or 3 years from now, people world will generate more than 230 zettabyte from data. So how the digital communication will control, will involve on this kind of data? That's why we need a new way, a new technology to involve, to use this kind of data. So this is the metaverse integrated communication. So this is kind of the million of data world were created. This is if you check after 3 years, 191 zettabytes. I'm assuming it's more than this number during the coming 3 years. So I'm calling the metaverse is the next generation of artificial intelligence journalism. Metaverse is the next generation of artificial intelligence journalism. If you have a look now how the metaverse has a potential growth or opportunities from like daily activities, from daily trading, from metaverse real estate, from investment in meta, from kind of how the kind of content they have create, and this is from McKinsey at the source, and you can have a look, see how fast the metaverse is controlling the media content and marketing as well during like less than 1 year. This also kind of the content that metaverse are generating during until the coming 8 years to 2030 in consumer use case in direct gaming, so e-commerce, live entertainment, digital media, education, healthcare, and also the enterprise case like banking, construction. This is kind of sector that metaverse will contribute in digital economy during the coming 10 years. Of course, we are focused on kind of media and marketing and digital media content, but these all sectors will not move forward without the media and digital content. So features and technologies, metaverse integrated communication, if we compare about the digital communication and metaverse integrated communication. First, in digital communication, kind of communications are integrated, but there in the metaverse are integrated communication powered by AI technologies. So this is the main difference. If we have a look now, we have more than 3,000 AI applications only in creating content. So this is a big number of applications we are using now in content. Communication part of dynamic HTML, JavaScript. This is the kind of how to create digital communication, the infrastructure of digital communication. But in metaverse, it's blockchain, AI, machine learning, natural language. This is the how to create the integrated communication in metaverse. In the digital communication, there is integrative platform and website like Facebook, etc. But in metaverse, decentralized data network, you have access your own. So this is kind of more decentralization on creating and publishing data in the metaverse communication. And the digital communication, interactive marketing content. On the other side, we have the target marketing content based on user behavior. This not only, but also in the metaverse integrated communication, we have kind of forecasting the consumer behavior. Data is owned by large tech giants like Facebook, like Google, like Apple, but on the other side, data is distributed across user and platform and spaces. So this is a quite comparing between digital communication and the metaverse integrated communication. And this is also the main gateway for both sides. What kind of browser we are using, storage, video calls, social media, and messaging. And you can have a look and see what difference between both of the metaverse communication and the smart communication. Now I'll jump fast how to use ChatGPT in artificial intelligence journalism era. Of course, guys, you are very familiar with ChatGPT, and the last week we have ChatGPT 4, and it has significant rules in creating content. So how we can, what kind of opportunities we can gain from this ChatGPT in media industry? I mainly divide it in 4 pillars. One of them in message or content. ChatGPT can help us in creating the kind of message or suitable content for media. Second, ChatGPT itself can be a media or channels to deliver that kind of content. Third, ChatGPT itself can be content maker. Any kind of content here, I'm talking about any kind of content makers. Is even it's like a text message, and it can create a website, it can create a kind of visual content. So ChatGPT, especially for one, can do that. Third is feedback creators. If you check this kind of pillars or rules that ChatGPT is playing now, this is the main elements of media processing, or the main element for media or communication as general. So the feedback creators, yeah, you can use ChatGPT also to create kind of feedback in any kind of message or people or organization or entities during you deliver your message, even in AI journalism tools or metaverse communication as well. So what kind of significant rules would ChatGPT play in media and communication? There is main rules. I said there is main rules. So there is many of different rules, but this is the 7 main rules. First, content creator in a creativity standard, of course, because now you know ChatGPT, if like ask him, please, I want kind of scenario and like scenario and sustainability, please give me scenario in like 5 or 3 or 6 minutes. It can create a very creative scenario. I tested like in 10 or 12 times last week, ChatGPT 4, how to create this creativity story content, and it was a great action. 2, metaverse marketeers. This kind of concept I have created like 3 months ago. It's in focus on people who are working and creating promotional or marketing content in metaverse. So we call them metaverse marketeers. ChatGPT very, very smart in this point. I tested ChatGPT like 6 times last week how to create. I asked him, please, can you create me kind of content in metaverse spaces based on 3D dimensions, and give me a great result as well. So it can play this rule very well. Media manager here, I mean how to manage the media entities. If like give him a position in media manager and Reuters or BBC, whatever, and imagine yourself in a manager and content creation in BBC. Please give us some tips. What is the future strategy? And it plays a very good role as well. Media strategy planner. If you have like media campaigns, you're going to create a new entities or social media campaigns or whatever, it can be a very good useful for you. Code of ethical manager or register, yeah, it can be very good to just give him the country and say we are creating this kind of media in Egypt, in India, and what kind of laws or what kind of code of ethics we have to check and we have to take in consideration. It gives you a very good tips and will be good code of ethics manager as well. Creativity video editor, of course, because it can write any scenario, it can give you kind of tabs, kind of tools you are using in video editing as well. Customer care observer, yes, give him any sector, any entity, banking sector, say what kind of customer care instruction I have to follow in this field, and can play a very good role. So this is the 7th significant roles that ChatGPT can play in media and communication. I try to focus on and this is if you check the growth of ChatGPT in just last 3 months from January until 3rd of March, active users now reach to 50 million users in beginning of March, even on desktop, mobile, worldwide. This is the growth of ChatGPT. So a quick insight about UAE government communication. And UAE government communication, they are based on different tools and different channels. One of them is the metaverse. How they are using metaverse right now in metaverse and ChatGPT and government communication. His Highness Sheikh Mohammed has given instruction last 2 months that a government has the ability to use ChatGPT in different services, and the human resource authorities start to already use ChatGPT in the government services, and also the same entity start to build a huge AI powered video and interviewing platform in Arabic language. So this is kind of how they are shift from the smart government communication to the metaverse, or what we can call the intelligent government communication. This is the metaverse kind of spaces that Dubai chambers, they are using metaverse. Now they are providing very good and advanced services in metaverse. And also Dubai has announced the metaverse strategy last month, and Emirates MBD, the kind of financial service that already has been raised in metaverse government events as well, donation as well in the metaverse many spaces. So this is kind of we can call the metaverse intelligent integrated communication. Thank you so much. This is the end, and welcome any questions.
Thank you, sir. Welcome to the next questionnaire session. Now we move on to the questionnaire session. The question for today is: the cost to access metaverse is expensive. Do you see this as a challenge to adoption of low and middle income countries?
Yeah, it's a bit. I'm always talking about the gap between the advanced countries or Europe countries and development countries. Yeah, there's a gap. But if you check like huge or giant technology, they start to reduce the prices of their technology, because without the third world people and this country, technology will not succeed, because the most people are using this kind of technology. So yeah, it's still a gap, but in the future it will be reducing. You are muted.
Pardon. Let me move on to the next question.
Yeah.
What new skills are required for journalists and media professionals to get emerging jobs in metaverse organizations?
I'm always, I have a concept called dynamic human skills, DHS. If you are a journalist, if you are a media creator, you have to gain this dynamic human skills. Don't stuck in just writing, in just editing video, and just like a photograph. You have to give yourself any kind of opportunity to create content. Means you have the ability to create visual content, written content. You have the ability to manage content in digital and metaverse. So start to teach yourself, start to engage in this kind of new tools and new technology to gain a new skills in media, not only as a journalist or a video editor or a planner, just play different rules and media.
Professor, here's your next question. Could you explain how metaverse integrated communication could make changes in journalism?
Definitely, it will change journalists because now people start to move forward from the traditional media tools, from the newspaper to artificial intelligence to digital. So now the Web 2 will be history after like 2 or 3 years. So people will look for the Web 3. So what is the channels for the Web 3 is the metaverse. So you have to move forward to the metaverse because it will change completely the games of creating content.
Thank you, sir. So could you explain or could you have a suggestion on the new kind of AI journalism that would be going to change by the system of metaverse or the ChatGPT and all?
Okay, for the ChatGPT, I already have explained the 7 rules that ChatGPT will change the content creation game. There is something I would like to talk about, the humanoid robots, this kind of robots that includes ChatGPT and other new generation or the 3rd generation of robots. This will include human skills and robot skills together. So this will be a significant change in the AI journalism as well during like 2 or 3 years. One of them is the ChatGPT. So focus on this humanoid robots will be a great change for the artificial intelligence games and during 2 or 3 years.
Thank you, sir. Here's the next question. It is heard that metaverse could be more dangerous than today's internet. So is it true, or is it more vulnerable for the hackers for exploiting this content?
Listen, I think any technology, we have a good side and a bad side. And how to control this kind of technology, this is to gain the benefits and the same time to control the bad side, this is always we are doing that. Once the robots, once the machine learning, once the blockchain has been discovered, people are looking for the benefit side, how to gain the benefits. And the other side, there is another big companies, big players are looking for how to benefit from the bad side. So we have to make the balance because we think that metaverse has some bad effect, bad side. We not use it. No, we'll be wrong because this is the life.
Thank you, Professor Abdul Sahib. Now, the questionnaire section is over, and I invite Mitra Venugopal to continue the session.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good luck.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mitra Venugopal, second year student of the Department of Media Studies of Christ Nagar College, Trivandrum. I'm privileged to introduce our honorable guest, Melvin Bell, founder and director of Focus Games, Glasgow, Scotland, UK. Mr. Bell co-founded Focus Games in 2004. He has over 20 years of international experience in healthcare industry, based in Glasgow, Scotland. He realized there was a need to provide alternative ways to engage learners and encourage meaningful discussions and collaborative learning. He is passionate about providing innovative tools for public health campaigns to excel and effectively engage the audience. Focus Games is a global leader in the game-based learning in healthcare. Since 2004, they have developed over 200 games that make health communication and healthcare more effective and enjoyable. He shall discuss how digital games are used effectively in public health campaigns and interventions. It is our honor to have you here, sir. I welcome you to the program. There will be a Q&A session after the talk, and the Menti Mentor link is posted in the YouTube comments. You can post your questions in the link given below. Without further ado, I invite Mr. Bell to take over the session.
Thank you very much, and it's a great pleasure to be with you this evening. Thank you, Dr. Manju, for the invitation, and for Nagar College for hosting such an interesting, inspiring event. I will share some slides with you. So let me just check that you can see them. And what I'm going to talk about is games and public health, and this is really about good content. I mean, this is where this links. If we're going to use games or other information in public health, then we need to make sure that it's robust and it's evidence-based. So what I want to do is, by way of introduction, give you a small overview of the company and what we do, to put some context to what I'm going to talk about. So we develop what we call serious games or game-based learning. So these are games which are used for any purpose other than for social. So in other words, you're not playing it for fun necessarily, or hopefully they are, but you're playing it to learn or to be informed or for some other purpose. We're based in Glasgow, as we said earlier on, and since 2004, we've been based in Glasgow in the UK and London. And since 2001, we also operate in India as well. But we are not limited to these geographies. We work and develop our products and use our products in over 40 countries around the world. So we work globally around game-based learning. As has been said already, content is, I suppose, is king. Content is extremely important, and we're no different from that. We need to have good, robust content to have in our games. As we said earlier on, if we are giving people health guidance, health direction, health advice, then we really need to make sure that the content is sound, it's based in evidence, and it's robust. Our approach to that is to partner with knowledge experts, because we cannot be and we shouldn't be the knowledge experts in all of the individual topics. So we rely and we partner with key institutions and knowledge experts around the world. In the UK, we work with the National Health Service here, which is our major institution, but we also work with professional bodies, royal colleges, universities, both here and most recently in India, but also in Sweden, Canada, Australia, the US, to name but a few. And it's that link that's really important for the games to be taken seriously, for the games to have an effect. Then you really have to make sure that your content is robust. And of course, in this, as we've heard, in this modern age where content is well, vast, and also that it also has a level of trust and distrust around it, then we really have to be careful that what we present in our games meets the highest criteria possible. That evidence base is extremely important. The content has to be rich for the games, has to be evidence-based. What we're trying to do in the games is lower the barriers to access information. And it's that lowering of the barriers, making it easier for people to engage in a topic, which sometimes can be quite complex. I mean, these ones here we're looking at on the screen here, these are ones which are aimed at healthcare professionals. And you can imagine for them, they're very critical if our content is not up to scratch and robust. But whether it be a healthcare professional or whether it be a member of the public, the same regime has to be there, which is that we have to be evidence-based, we have to be robust, and we have to be strong in terms of our sources of information. What we're trying to do through the use of games is get some change, beneficial change is really what we're aiming for. So how do we get someone to change what they do today and do something different, do something better, do something in a different way? And it doesn't matter whether you're a healthcare professional or a member of the public, that objective is the same. So games can cover so many different topics, whether it be at the healthcare side, disease areas, which are rather complex, or at the other end, when we're looking at things like how can a patient manage the pain? How can we inform them to help manage that pain? Or how can we improve the uptake of vaccinations around things like COVID or flu or other types of vaccinations? Or actually around dementia, which is actually just raise awareness about a disease which is becoming more prominent in all parts of the world and impacts families and impacts individuals and has a profound effect on impact on the family. And getting that awareness and that understanding of something like dementia is absolutely critical. But these are complex issues, these are complex discussions. And if you're not a healthcare professional, then of course that can be a challenge. So we're using games as a way of really making sure that we get complex information over in a simplified way to as wide an audience as possible. And to be fair and to be honest, even healthcare professionals quite appreciate having complex information presented in an easier and more understandable and more accessible way. So that's the background. That's why games. That's why we're talking about games today in this conference. And it's how games are going to be used in a robust way. Looking at information, looking at content, one of the major barriers for changing health behavior is what they call health literacy. So this is looking at how well do people understand the messages which are being presented to them. We know that a lot of people, we've just heard how the metaverse and all the other worldwide sources of information are prevalent. People look for information when they're concerned about a topic, maybe they're concerned about their health, and they look for information to try and alleviate some of those concerns. Understanding what's presented to them is critical. And of course, what we see in Europe is that in Europe, up to 47% of people have poor health literacy. And I found recently some figures, which actually are from 2013, but I don't think they'll have changed too much, is that in India, up to 60% had low health literacy. And even in areas of postgraduate education subjects, it was still over half had difficulty with health information. So why is that important? Well, of course, if you can't get the message over effectively around whether it be vaccination uptake, think of the recent COVID pandemic, how do we get that information over to people? If it's difficult for them to understand and it's complex, then that is a barrier, that's a problem. And of course, there are other things that impact on that. Someone's existing health problems will impact on that. Financial deprivation or social deprivation will impact on how they understand and uptake the information. So we're using games as a way of breaking down some of those barriers, making it easier for people to understand the messages, not make it too complex, but still make sure that the information you give them is robust and evidence-based. So by way of some examples of how we've used games and how games have been used, let's look at a couple of areas. One that's very recent and one that we've been working on for quite a number of years. So these are games which are for the public as well as healthcare professionals, and they're looking at the uptake of vaccinations. So they're looking at the uptake of the influenza or the flu vaccination. And we've been doing this for well over 7 years now in terms of encouraging people to uptake the vaccination. And that's shown to be very effective. And more recently with COVID, we've been working on a similar type approach as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few moments. But what we're trying to do through these games is very simple, is present facts. And facts are very difficult to get to. And we know that from all of our own experiences with using the internet. So present facts in a simple way. Challenge the misconceptions, challenge the misinformation, but again, do it in a positive way. And of course, through that, you're giving better understanding and you're trying to encourage beneficial change. So give them a reason to do something, give them a call to action, if you like. So how successful can a simple 1 minute, 2 minute game be? Well, very successful from the evidence that we've been able to bring together. So looking at over 50,000 who played the Flu B game, most people, 81%, enjoyed it. So it wasn't a problem for them. It wasn't something they found difficulty with. But more importantly, 35% of that population improved their perception of vaccination. And that's a significant step. And of course, that was the UK, but we also did this in France, where very similar types of numbers came out. In other words, that beneficial change, that idea that you would improve the uptake of vaccination by going and getting your vaccine. So these were really important steps. They can be embedded into more complex things. So for instance, just now we're working on a study called UK Reach. It's a national study, and it's looking at the outcomes of COVID, and it's looking at hard to reach communities. So ethnicity is a big challenge here. And we're using the game embedded within that study as a way of engaging, informing, and getting the participants to understand the issues and understand what we're trying to do there. That study will come out, it will carry on this year. There'll be some results will come out that into next year. And more locally, last year in India, and we're very pleased to work with the college last year. I know there's some new information coming out on this a little bit later on. So I won't be preempting any of that, more just to say this is an important step. Looking at COVID uptake in India and looking at how you reach different groups, because you know better than I do the number of languages, the diversity of the population. So what we did was we took that game and we applied it to 5 other Indian local languages. So games have the ability to transverse not only age groups, but they can also transverse geography. And of course, they can also transverse languages as well. And it's that simplicity of access to these types of information through games that's really important. And we're pleased that we got quite a lot of publicity last year when we launched the initiative. And that's really important because, again, it's getting that news and that information out to people. The biggest challenge we have with games, of course, is just letting people know they exist and letting them know that something exists that can help them understand a complex topic a little bit easier. So some other areas that might be interesting. I talked about dementia. Dementia is a growing problem around the world. Whether it's the UK, whether it's India, whether it's America, Australia, this is a growing issue. People are living longer, and therefore dementia is becoming more prevalent. And it's not only an issue for the individual, it's also an issue for the family and for the health service and the health community. But particularly the family. If you have people or someone within your family with dementia, at whatever stage that is, early onset or late onset, then managing and coping with that and understanding what they're going through and understanding the direction in which that disease will take is extremely important. Dementia Games started off in the UK, and we were working with dementia charities to raise awareness within families that even if you have dementia, you still have a lot to contribute, and you can still have a lot of autonomy as an individual, even though you're suffering from what will become a very debilitating disease. And it's making people understand that, taking away some of the fear that people may have, and of course, making it easier to understand your relative or your family member who has dementia. And that was very successful. It worked extremely well. And then last year, we worked in Indonesia with the University of Gajah Mada, and they were looking at doing the same thing there because they have an issue with dementia awareness as well. And that was, again, different language, different community, different culture, but actually they adopted it and they accepted it in exactly the same way as we did in the UK. And that was really important. People enjoyed working with the game, using the game, and developed it specifically to meet the needs of that community. I'm pleased to say that actually from that, the dementia game will also now this year be going into Vietnam, it will go into Malaysia, into Singapore, into Australia, and into South Korea as well. So it shows that actually a simple format to break down some of those barriers can transcend some of the other more difficult, sometimes challenges that we have. Just to finish off, I just talked very briefly about two other projects which might be of interest. So HPV vaccination uptake. So this is an important vaccination for specifically young girls, but also in a lot of countries now they're looking at vaccinations for young males as well. It can be a difficult topic to discuss within families because you have to get your HPV vaccination to be most effective before you become sexually active. So therefore, it's usually given to young girls around about the 12, 13 age group. Getting that message over to not only to the child, why they're having the vaccination, but also to the families to discuss what can be a very difficult topic. What we did in France is we worked with over 60 schools and over 5,000 students to develop a resource which actually made it easy for, first of all, the student to understand what HPV was and what it was preventing in terms of cancers and future life, and why it was important to have it at a younger age. But also, we were using this as a way to get the students to talk to their family, to talk to their parents, to raise it as a topic, and break down some of those barriers that there might have been when talking about a sensitive subject like this. And that's been extremely popular. It's worked extremely well. We're rolling that out from our pilot phase to a national phase later on this year. And there's a study being published again later on this year, which will give us some exciting and interesting numbers to back up what we've been doing. I won't take too much on some of those other games, but really just to say that it doesn't really matter what the topic is. It's about how do you engage a complex issue in a simplified way to as wide an audience as possible, whether it's healthcare professionals, whether it's members of the public, whether it's patients. That mechanism can work extremely well. And I know that in India, as in the UK, as in other countries, there are a range of issues which are extremely important for us. Antimicrobial resistance is extremely important. How do we raise awareness of that? Sickle cell disease, again, it's a big issue in India. It's a big issue in other countries as well. But how do you raise that awareness of a complex and difficult topic to an audience? In this case, we're aiming this at children to help them better understand their condition and how they have to self-manage their condition, not only in their childhood, but actually all the way through their life. And you have to build that knowledge and that understanding as early as possible. And of course, areas which actually might even seem really difficult to talk about, things like sexism and bullying in the workplace or in education. Again, using games, and we're working on a game, we've been launched a game in the UK just in the last few months, which looks at how you raise this discussion within the workplace? How do you raise awareness around what is sexist behavior and what is bullying and what is not acceptable? So using games can be an easy way into raising some of these difficult topics with as wide an audience as possible. So hopefully what I've shown today is that what might seem like a trivial thing, using games, actually is a very powerful way to get complex information in a simplified way to an audience, and also to make it as easy for an audience to interact with that topic. Not putting up barriers, lowering the barriers to accessibility, but of course sitting behind it all. If you're going to create confidence and understanding around these complex topics, you have to make sure that the content that you use is robust and has evidence behind it. So I'm going to finish there, and thank you for that. And with any questions at the time, I'm happy to take those.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening us with your session. And thank you for letting us know that games are more than fun. It is also informational. Now, I invite Ninu PK, Assistant Professor of Department of Media Studies, Nagar College, Trivandrum, for the Q&A session.
Hello, Mr. Bell.
Hi there.
Okay, so shall we start the question answer session?
Please.
I'm Ninu and I'll be moderating the session.
Thank you.
So the first question is, digital games are surely a great way of engaging people to public content. How can researchers use the data to measure effectiveness of campaigns and engagement level?
Yes, that's a really interesting question. What we do is actually use games as a way of collecting that data as well. So, for instance, the Fluby game or the dementia game, when we do the research part of it, then we have a pre-questionnaire which players will use. They will then play the game, and then after the game is finished, then they will get another questionnaire as well. So those questionnaires are measuring attitude and they're measuring knowledge, and those are validated questionnaires. So they're robust. We know that they will tell what we're looking for. And of course, if you marry that alongside the content that we collect through the game itself, so we can identify which questions in the game did a player answer or look for. Did they get those answers right? You marry that up with that wider knowledge understanding from the surveys either side of that playing that game, then that gives you really rich information, and that's really important. A lot of our games, we partner with universities and other academic institutions, and their focus is on creating research and understanding as to how games impact for good within those communities. So data, research, understanding of that is extremely important. And actually games are a good way to do that because you can make the feedback or the assessment game-based as well. So actually it doesn't feel like you're doing a 20 questionnaire of attitude because you can build it into a game format. So actually you still ask your 20 questions, you just do it in a slightly different way, and it makes it more interesting, more accessible.
Thank you for answering that question. Shall we move on to the next one?
Please.
So this next question is, use of medical terminology is almost unavoidable in game designing. Is there any way to counter that given the poor health literacy rates?
Yes, and you're right. Sometimes you cannot avoid using some terminology, but when we're aiming it at let's say the healthcare audience, first of all. So healthcare audience, professional nurses, doctors, allied health professionals, they want some terminology because obviously that's their profession. So they want to be able to communicate to their peers, to their wider team. So they want to understand and know how to use that technical language, if you like. But of course, they also have to turn to the patient at some point, and they have to communicate that complex technical information into a language that the patient can understand. And we know from research that if you do not explain simply or in language that they can understand, then that can affect the outcome. So for instance, children is a big example. There's lots of research showing for children that if you use long, complex medical terms, it can affect the recovery speed of the child from the disease or the illness. And part of that is because in their mind, they think that they are more seriously ill than they actually are because they don't understand the terminology. So it sounds more difficult and more bad than it actually perhaps is. So there's lots of research around that. When we're looking at members of the public, so a non-technical audience, then it's really important that you take out as much of the technical terminology as possible and simplify it. And most of the terminology can be explained in simple language, everyday language. But of course, there is always that link between, you have to, at least in their minds, link the simple explanation to the technical term, because when they're looking for it in further reading or further investigation, then they want to be able to identify that language as well. So it's complex, but it is really important if you want to get them engaged in the first place, that you scrub out as much of that technical language as possible and explain it as simply and as straightforwardly as possible. And that works for both members of the public as well as healthcare professionals.
Thank you for answering that question. Shall we move on to the next one?
Please.
The next question is, tackling misinformation is the greatest challenge for communicators and journalists in the era of social media. Can games be used to provide credible and trustworthy information for tackling misinformation?
Well, yes, I think along with, as we said earlier in earlier presentations, I think the provenance of the content is important here. And I think whether it be games or other forms of presenting information, I think it's about the robustness of the content. And we see that with our games. We partner with knowledge experts, so it's clear where that content is coming from. We reference all of the content, so we know where all of our statements or our questions or our answers come from. And of course, the other thing which is important is not misinformation, but evolving information. And healthcare is one of those spaces where there is evolving information. If you had talked to somebody in the early 1970s, long time ago, about peptic ulcers, then the solution to that would have been surgery. You move that forward 20 years, and the solution to that is medication, tablets, because the understanding of the disease changed. And I think that's the complexity with health education, is that it is changing. The understanding of the health condition is changing every year. Technology is changing in terms of how we can approach those diseases. So getting robust information is extremely important, but also updating it and maintaining it throughout the life of the game or the product or whatever it is extremely important. And in health especially, that pace of change can move very, very fast. So you have always got to be aware of that. You've also got to be very aware of the content and the games and make sure that what is presented is up to date and as up to date as possible. But it is a challenge.
Yes, okay. Thank you for answering that question. Shall we move on to the next one?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay. I guess this question is from one of our students. The question is, how can college students get involved for promoting socially beneficial games to population, which would bring behavior changes to address some of the public health challenges?
Yeah, I think it's everyone's opportunity to get involved. It's the old sort of X degrees of separation. I know 100 people. These 100 people know 100 people, and that's how these things happen. I think sometimes we are very good at sharing, shall we say, trivial material. We're very good at sharing our social media about what we did last night or where we went for dinner or things like that. And I think it's probably just taking that attitude of saying, okay, here's something that's important as well. And if I think it's important, perhaps my friends would think it's important, and be able to share that in a good way, in a robust way. So I think that it's everyone's opportunity to do that. If you're a student or an academic or a professional in a sector, then of course you will have your professional networks as well. And I think it's much easier to share a game, and probably more interesting to share a game than to perhaps in the first instance share an academic paper. I suspect that if you sent a social media message to your friends and said, here's a great paper I read yesterday, I would encourage you all to have a look at it. Probably would not get as much response if said, I played this really interesting game, you might find it fun and informative. So I think it's about just looking and seeing how we can use our networks to share good information and good ways of accessing it. Student nurses, for instance, they're extremely important for us in terms of accessing information and sharing that, not only with their peers, but also when they get out into clinical practice, challenging some of the ideas that come from years past, and challenging that in a positive way. So games are a good way to do that. People like them, they're fun, but they have a serious purpose behind them.
Thank you for answering that question. Now we have one more question left. So shall we move on to that?
Please.
Okay. Given the interdisciplinary nature of it, what skills would be required for a student to get into the area of gamified health communication? Do you want me to repeat the question?
No. I'm just reflecting on that's a big question to deal with it. I think it's probably a very simplified way of approaching this as well. I think that is to, whether you are learning yourself or developing your own skills, your own knowledge, I think games and game-based learning is a skill which actually incorporates a range of different things. So the first thing it does is it's about editing and simplifying and curating complex information and bringing that down into something which is meaningful and manageable. And it probably doesn't matter what profession you're a part of. I think we can all see that simplification and curating of knowledge and information can be quite important. So I think anyone who wants to work in this area or to use this type of resource as part of their current studies, or actually future studies when they're in professional life and they're mentoring and supporting others, then game-based learning is a good way to do that. There's technical skills. Obviously, if you're in the area where you want to build and develop games, then there's a technical resource, a technical skill required for that. Those are no different from a lot of the programming skills that you would want for many other vocations and professions. But I think combining everything is a way of engaging your peers, your future learners, your future sort of professionals. Then I think just get involved. I think there's lots of opportunities out there to use and participate in games, not only from us, but from a wide range of other places as well. I think there's also an opportunity to think about how games can be adapted for something you're interested in. And quite often that's the key, is what interests you. And if that's a complex subject, then perhaps games can be more accessible. Whether you're a student, whether you're a professional, I think it's about just having a passion for sharing and exchange of knowledge in a simplified way.
Okay, Mr. Bell, so that's all the questions that we have. And thank you so much for joining with us and taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us. Your session was really insightful.
Lovely. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so now we are moving on to the final part of our program today. And for that, I invite Jennifer Ronald to take over from here. Jennifer, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm Jennifer Runa, second year student at the Department of Media Studies, Nagar College, and I'm here to introduce our last guest of the day and also to invite him for the closing remarks. Our last guest is Sujit Narayan, a man of varied talents who has been involved in field of academics for nearly a decade, teaching at various levels. Sujit Narayan is the head of Department of Journalism at Essex School of Communication. He has been associated with many reputed print and online media for a long time. His areas of interest are PR and advertising, political reporting, and development communication. He is also the State Coordinator of Public Relations Council of India, YCC, Kerala. We are privileged to have you with us today, sir. Now, I invite Mr. Sujit Narayan for his closing remarks.
വീഡിയോ കാണാല്ലേ സോറി hello
Yeah, you're audible. Kindly proceed.
okay today is a great speakers Professor Ashraf, Anna Christina, Melvin Bell, Professor Mohammed Abdul Sahar, and my dearest Manju ma'am, other organizers. I would like to congratulate Nagar College and Manju ma'am for selecting this topic, content for public good. I use this occasion to also congratulate the organizers also. Today's 4 sessions were very insightful and interesting. Professor Ashraf, he spoke a very wonderful introductory session. Professor Mohammed Abdul Sahar, Professor of Intelligent Integrated Media and Mascom, Professor of Sharjah University, he well articulated what kind of significant roles would a ChatGPT play in media and communication. And when I hear Melvin Bell, I thought to begin a game-based learning startup also. That much interesting. He spoke very nicely. Thank you so much, sir. Melvin Bell, sir. Thank you so much. And I'm speaking as a journalism faculty. The students, those who are attending the session, they all know journalism is a profession demands more honesty. Journalism is a profession demands more seriousness. The profession also needs to correct ourselves. Like Anna ma'am, senior program specialist for freedom of expression and safety journalist UNESCO, she mentioned the impact of digital journalism on justice and human rights. She mentioned the attack against journalists as well. We know there are some undemocratic, unconstitutional intervention from the government itself. It is imperative that we stand with the public. It is imperative that we stand with the society. These all are insights made from these 4 sessions. Once again, I congratulate Manju ma'am, because I have been seeing for the last few years her relentless effort for conducting this type of international seminars by choosing contemporary media issues, contemporary media topics. So I hope in future also we can associate. Myself and my department feel extremely honored to be part of this session. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for the 4 eminent speakers, Father Tito, Professor Emil, Assistant Professor Neenu, and some students coordinator, Maitrey Venugopal, and some of the students also. Thank you so much for inviting us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, so much for your insights. We have finally come to an end of today's program. For the kind notice of the audiences, There's a feedback link being provided in the YouTube comment box or in the comment section. You can kindly fill that. Now I invite Ram Gopal to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Jennifer. So, dear esteemed guests, speakers, and participants, and each and every one of you tuned into the show, a very good evening to all of you. My name is Ram Gopal. I'm a final year student from the Department of Media Studies, Nagar College. So, on behalf of the Department of Media Studies, the Organizing Committee, and Nagar College, it gives me great pleasure to extend a heartfelt gratitude to all of you for your valuable contribution to the International Conference on Content for Public Good called IMPETUS 2023. We are truly grateful for your unwavering support, dedication, and enthusiasm throughout this event. Your presence has made this conference a resounding success, and we couldn't have done it without you. We would like to thank our keynote speakers, every one of them with their amazing teachings. I have actually been taking down notes here and learning so many new things. And so we first had our welcome speech from Professor S. Ashraf, and he talked about how people tend to take AI for granted. And he ended it with a very powerful statement, which says, is artificial intelligence really intelligent? And are the free things that are available to us actually free? So, that really gives us a lot to think about. And then we had the amazing session by Professor Anna Christina Rulis, and she talked about how journalism is a public good. And in one of her question and answer sessions, she actually said, how people deserve info, and it's journalists and journalism is the aspect of society that actually bridges that gap. And then we had Dr. Muhammad Abdul Zahir, and he talked about how AI can be used for the future of journalism. He talked about how ChatGPT can be used for content creation and metaverse marketing, etc. And he also talked about what are the skills needed for the future journalists. And we have actually heard, since I'm a journalism student, I've heard it a lot about in class that, being a future journalist, it's not just about learning just one skill. You have to be a backpack journalist, where you have to be skilled in all areas. Like if you know how to create a video content, you need to know how to edit it. If you know how to edit it, you should know how to make it into a script. And so it's all that's what also Dr. Abdul Zahir also talked about. He talked about how we need to be skilled in all areas. And then we had the amazing session by Dr. Melvin Bell. He talked about how to gamify the public health campaigns and all. And the research from all those research actually show that how much effective games are for learning these public health awareness. Even in our India itself, we had the Corona B game, which actually gave a lot of awareness to people about what are the dangers and what to do and what not to do during the COVID-19. And then we had Sujit Narayan with his closing remarks as well. So thank you for that, sir. So, and we would just I would just like to thank all of you once again. In short, all of you had simply just put amazing presentations. It was thought-provoking, informative, and inspiring, and they have definitely left a lasting impact on all of us. Next, I would like to thank our manager, Reverend Father Dr. Chikto Verghese CMI, for all his support. Our principal, Dr. Jolly Jacob, for her guidance, our head of the department, Manju Rose Matthews, for organizing the entire program, Emil Abraham for all his technical support, and I would like to thank Tara CB and Ninu PK for coordinating the whole session, and the student coordinators who have been assisting the whole program, both in front of and behind the scenes. Last but not least, we would like to thank all the participants who have attended this conference, whether in person or virtually. Your engagement and active participation have created a vibrant and stimulating environment that has enriched our collective learning experience. Once again, thank you all for your contribution to this conference, and we hope that the knowledge and ideas shared here will continue to inspire us all to work towards a better world for the public good. But the enlightenment is not over yet. The IMPETUS International Conference Day 2 will be held tomorrow. So till then, this is Team Nagar College signing off.